Or no?
Channel 7 that way for a while.
George, how you doing?
Okay,
Good. How was last Tuesday?
it's 7 o'clock, and we're going to call the meeting to order. I want to grant permission to Westwood Media Center to live stream and videotape the meeting. Is there anybody else who wants to record the meeting? Okay, I don't see anything. I really want to welcome all the participants. I know right after the Pledge of Allegiance, I will go through the process we're going to follow tonight, and I will welcome people individually as they come up. But we have planning board members here, we have select person board members here, we have consultants here, so we do want to thank everybody for attending. We have town council here and the town administrator. So with that, by the way, we have a member who is participating remotely. So I do have to do a roll call on all the steps we take, which we'll be doing anyways because part of this is going to be a public hearing. So with that, if we would stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Victoria, would you do the members' roll call so we can start the first part of our meeting?
Bill Bruce,
He's going to be here in 5 minutes.
John Kerry,
Here?
Jim Ferrero,
Here.
Seth Frederickson,
Here.
George Hart,
Here.
Caitlin Jersak, here. George Marone,
Here.
Christina Petajuic, here. Chris Peretta,
Here.
Sean Weller,
Here.
and Alex Yell.
Here.
Okay, so this is a bit of a unique meeting for the Finance and Warrant Commission. We are going to do our normal December meeting, but we are also doing a hearing, our public hearing for the special town meeting. So in a moment, I'm going to have to do a roll call to open that, and we will go through the process. I have asked Vice Chair Chris Peretta. He will chair the special town meeting section of this tonight. At the end of the presentations, we will open it up to members who have questions, and then anybody from the public or press who wants to ask questions, we will allow that. Then we will close it by doing a roll call, and then we will deliberate and take our vote tonight. And you're more than welcome to stay and watch the deliberations and watch how we take our vote. When we're done with that, we're going to go to our regular meeting, which primarily involve a presentation from the planning board. So a bit of a busy night, but we're trying to get a lot done together as town officials to facilitate the special town meeting. So now I want to open up the session for the hearing for the special town meeting. So Victoria, will you do a roll call?
Okay, Bill Bruce isn't here yet. John Kerry,
Yes.
Jim Ferrero,
Here.
Seth Frederickson,
Here.
George Hertz,
Here.
Caitlin Jersak, here. George Marone,
Here.
Christina Petajuic, here. Chris Peretta,
Here.
Sean Weller, and Alex Yell.
Here.
Okay, with that, let me turn it over to Chris, and you may want to.
All right,
Go
thank
for
you.
it.
Thank you, Chairman Hertz.
Oh, Chris, one last thing. When any of the members here speak, please remember to press the green button so those watching on TV can hear what we are saying, okay?
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson Cummings from the Select Board. And I see you have a representative of Dorn Whittier with you, maybe two, I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, two representatives. So at this point, I will turn it over to Select Board Chair Cummings to talk about the special town meeting Select Board Article 1.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prada. And the first order of business is that I will call to order a meeting of the Select Board. I will note that my colleagues Rob Gotti and Joe Prevotera are also present.
Okay.
So with that, thank you and good evening, everyone. I am very pleased to be with you tonight to present on the two articles on the warrant for our special town meeting scheduled for January 17, 2024. Although we originally had 3 articles on the warrant, at our meeting this past Monday, we voted to remove the 3rd article, which was a miscellaneous article. The second of our articles tonight, as you may recall, is a debt housekeeping article, which I will discuss later tonight. And the first article is the focus of the special town meeting, which is an article to fund the design and bid documents for a new Fire Station 1, our main fire station. I'm very pleased to have with me tonight Chip Heitkamp and Jason Harris from Dorr and Whittier, an architectural firm which performed the feasibility study on Fire Station 1. In short, this is a matter of urgency because our main fire station, which was built 75 years ago and has not been renovated since 1975, was not built to support the weight of today's apparatus. It is undersized, it is outdated, and it is inaccessible. Quite simply, it does not meet the needs of today's department or the community. Before I turn this over to Chip and Jason, I just want to speak very briefly about the long and deliberate public process that has led us to this evening. In 2013, the town convened a public safety facilities task force, which was comprised of town elected officials, staff, and community members, including George Hertz. And it was formed to explore options with respect to our aging public safety facilities. The task force established that both the fire and police departments needed larger and more modern facilities in order to serve the community's needs. The task force followed a disciplined and analytical approach to arrive at a proposed solution. While the deficits of the main fire station were well known at that time, the task force recommended that it was time to build a new Islington fire station on its current site and a new police station behind what was then the existing station. That plan was endorsed by the Select Board, by FinCom, by the Long Range Financial Planning Committee, and by the Planning Board. And in 2015, town meeting authorized the construction of the Islington Fire Station, and in 2016, town meeting authorized the construction of the new police station, both of which were funded within Proposition 2.5 due to the new growth from University Station. Since that time, as you are aware, residents have focused on the capital needs of the school district, with the consolidation of the Hanlon and Deerfield schools in the Pine Hills construction project with major funding from the MSBA. In 2022, the Select Board commissioned a feasibility study and an operational study with respect to Fire Station 1 and the fire department respectively. The operational study informed the feasibility study. The feasibility study was presented to the Select Board by Dorr and Whittier in this past October, and the board agreed with our consultants that the current site of the main fire station is the most optimal location for a new fire station. The estimated cost of the fire station design and bid documents is $3.5 million. Article 1 seeks the town's approval for the allocation of $2.1 million of free cash for this work, and the Select Board has already voted to allocate $1.4 million in ARPA funds for the balance, contingent on town meeting vote. So before I turn this over, I do want to highlight that Chip and Jason are architects with Dorr and Whittier, which is one of the best architectural firms in the country. And as many of you know, Dorr and Whittier has been a trusted and valued partner with the town of Westwood for many years, having been the architect for the police station, the Islington Fire Station, and now with the Pine Hill Elementary School. So with that, thank you for your kind attention. I'm now going to turn it over to Chip.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Chip Heitkamp again, Dorr and Whittier. Thank you for the intro. Jason Harris is with me. Just for, Mary Ann hit on a lot of this, but so last fall, we started working with the town and the administration, and then, to do this feasibility study that we did present in October. We did some building assessments, or at the Fire Station 1, did the building assessments there, we had all of our consultants, so structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, hazmat, civil, everyone goes through, and we reviewed the building again, we actually did a follow-up to the 2013 was our initial one, so this is more of an update to this building, a focus on this building. So we have prepared that, and that kind of is the base for a lot of the presentation today. So what we will do is we'll, slide 1, it's more or less what Marianne just went through. So one of the things that we did in addition to the building assessments was the programming for a new facility. So that effort was kind of spearheaded by Jason. I'll let him speak to the next couple of slides, and we'll talk about kind of that programming and kind of went into kind of the new facility proposed that we've been working through.
Yeah, thank you, Chip. My name is Jason Harris again, Dorn Whittier, and I'm the programmer, planner, and also work on design for public safety projects. So as Chip mentioned, we came in and we went through, started this feasibility study by doing some assessments of the existing building and also sitting down with the staff and having conversations about what it is that they need going through the future, what is working for them now, what's not working for them now, getting a good feel and understanding for that. We start that process by doing an online questionnaire, and it's about 100 questions. We sent that out. That went out to the entire staff, which I believe is 46 people. We got 23 responses back, so about 50% of the staff responded back. Everybody had an opportunity to weigh in. We took all of that information and went through a very extensive, detailed process, 4 or 5 meetings at least that were formal, and really went through, documented everything. And there's a very detailed version of that in the feasibility study. What is up on the screen right now is a very high-level summary of what we found, which I'll go through here in a second. Very extensive. We went through with different department heads as well as the chief and representatives from the town. All participated in that process. We got great feedback. We do this by looking at all of our past projects, industry standards. We compare to other projects that other firms have done, other stations through New England and also around the country as well.
Yeah, and I would say and in this case, we had the benefit of having a recently completed fire station in the same department, right, which gave them kind of a what did we like, what do we dislike, from about roughly a decade ago when that was getting designed. The industry has changed a lot, but that was kind of we don't see that on a lot of jobs. You don't get that opportunity. So I think the programming effort here was a little unique in that way. Yeah,
that's right. Thank you. So through the process of going through that questionnaire and series of meetings, we went through, and what you see on the screen right now is again a high-level summary of what our findings were. You can see the existing area of the building is just under 15,000 square feet total. What we came up with initially was closer to 40,000 square feet in the proposed program. What you're seeing there, the 36,000 and some change, is a reduction of that. So when we go through that process and we figure out what the needs are, we also go and try to optimize what those needs are long term. We look for opportunities to have multi-use spaces, and ways to make spaces as efficient as possible. So we took about 1,800 square feet out of the program during that process and got it down to the number that you see there. You can see it's more than 2.5 times the existing size of the building, and that's really based on the current staff size, the number of apparatus that the current department has, which is a significant growth factor from where the department was when they first started and when this building was built. And so the size of the building right now at 14,000 or just under 15 is very inadequate for the number of apparatus that they have, the size of the department, and the way a modern facility operates, which includes being able to come back from a call and being able to properly decontaminate, clean off, being able to have separation throughout the building from contaminants that may come back with them, and that is all new, recent by code. That was just put into code within the last 2 years, even though it's been industry standards and practices for 5 to 10 years. It is now officially in code, and that requires more square footage than the existing building would allow them to do. New equipment that didn't exist in the past, more space to make some of those things happen. So that's what you see here, and just a note too, we also made sure to include some future growth within that number. So we wanted to make sure that the building doesn't just work for them the day that it opens, but that from an economical standpoint, there is room to grow into that building without having to come back 5 years later and say, the building is too small, we need to add more. So we're hoping to be able to get as much maximum life out of that as possible. All right, and then the next slide, what you can see is, this is a comparison to the existing Fire Station 2 at Islington that we also did. This building is about 3 times the size of the Islington station. There's a number of reasons for that. Number one, there's a significant more number of apparatus and equipment housed at FS1. This building is going to require 6 apparatus bays plus a maintenance bay. All the maintenance is currently done by the department in-house, and it's all done at FS1. That requires a lot of space, not just the maintenance bay itself, but a lot of associated spaces for storage of parts and equipment, and for safety as well, cleanup areas, things like that, that are not in Fire Station 2. Also, the entire administrative area is going to be housed within Fire Station 1. There's only a very small amount of administrative space in Fire Station 2. We've also accommodated a significant amount of space for training within the new building that is not even currently available in Fire Station 1 and is beyond what they have in Fire Station 2. This training is critical for staff to be able to continue to learn on the job and to be able to learn new techniques and to be able to keep up with their training as they go on. And it's always less expensive to do that in-house than have to go somewhere else, drive there, take the apparatus off, and do that training somewhere else. The operations total, as you can see there, that's mostly the apparatus bays. That is basically just enough space to get in all of the apparatus that they have now, right? Plus have the maintenance bay with just a very small amount of room for growth for additional small apparatus. The thought is that there's not going to necessarily be a need to add large apparatus in the future. There will be replacement of apparatus, but likely not the addition of more numbers of apparatus. So the department believes that that number of apparatus bays will be sufficient. And then infrastructure, that's just required operational parts of the building. The one thing I want to add is the grossing factor, which I know a lot of people are probably not familiar with. What that specific number accounts for, and we usually start with an estimate of about 30%, is unplanned areas. So things like mechanical shafts, corridors, which you can't plan until you actually draw the building and know what exactly you need, wall thicknesses, things that you can't account for by just putting them in an Excel spreadsheet. So there is always that additional 30%, which usually we're able to bring down a little bit during the design process, but we always start around that.
Yeah, and this might be a good time to emphasize that, is that these are all very preliminary. Like, the programming effort is kind of gets kind of the framework, gives you kind of like your the rules of the road, if you will, and then when SD starts legitimately, we really start to drill down on certain areas and really develop the plan. So everything gets more and more refined as we go. So this is all very preliminary in nature, but again, these are, so here we're comparing projections and estimates to actual we're comparing to FS2. So,
Right. Thank you. All right, so what we have here, you can see the existing Fire Station 1 at the top there, and a lot of the building is a little bit obscured there by the apparatus, but I think most people are familiar with it anyways. A few things I want to point out. The 2 drawings at the bottom, these are concepts of where this might go based on the program and some of the initial concept plans we put together. They're just concepts, but we wanted to try to really bring in the character of the area, some of the residential spaces that are around it. There's a lot of houses and other residential type buildings. You'll notice the drawing on the bottom left. You can see the grade change from front to back. And this is one of the things that is very unique about this site. There's a significant amount of grade change from High Street going down towards the back. This is something we accounted for and accommodated with by having a lower level that is accessible to the back of the building with an entrance, and then there's also an entrance at the front of the building at street level. So that there's also some square footage that accounts for those additional transitional spaces built in as well.
And I would add just on that grade change, it allows us to keep that the elevation at the street level more in, keep that, get you 3 levels that appear more closer to a 2.5.
That's right.
We have a larger apparatus bay ceiling height than a traditional home, but it keeps your overall height lower than necessarily it would. The other thing I'd point out is the 4 bays on the street of the existing station, where we have 5 on ours, and we have the 1 out back where the existing station has 3 out back. So we're really, we are maintaining kind of the overall apparatus count.
Right.
Because we have the what you don't see in the new elevations here, which you will see in the, go back, yep.
And actually, one thing I wanted to point out on the elevation, actually both of those on the bottom, next to the clock tower to the right, you can see an area with 2 bays and 3 windows above it that actually is meant to mimic the previous Fire Station 1 before the current Fire Station 1. We wanted to bring a little bit of history into that as well. So that is almost a direct replication of what the original Fire Station 1 looked like.
Oh, I thought the clock was just a Doran Whittier signature.
No, that was a request, actually.
That was
That was a request to bring in a little bit of Fire Station 2 into this building as well. All right, and then here you can sort of see the overall size of the buildings. On the left, in red, you can see that's the footprint of the existing building. On the right, you can see how that compares to the proposed building. And again, that's broken up over 2 levels, the lower level in the back and the street level in the front. On the back side, the rectangle that sticks out towards the top of the page there, that's the maintenance bay, which is accessed from the back of the building. Similar to the way it is now, but this one's turned 90 degrees, and apparatus will actually be coming from the back of the parking lot to get to that bay rather than going down the ramp from High Street. So the ramp to go down the street will mostly be for public access. Apparatus that need to go to the maintenance bay will be coming in from behind. One more thing, actually, sorry about that. We also wanted to make sure that this building fit in within all of the setbacks of the building. The current building, actually, on the left, you can see the bottom right-hand corner sticks out past that white dashed line, which is the building setback. We made sure that the new building is set back appropriately to meet those setback lines. Okay.
Good. Thank you. So now we'll just walk through some, we have some slides here of the existing conditions, the building imagery. So there'll be a couple more slides, but so what we see here is the first slide, or the first photo is in the apparatus bay. You can see the side of one of the apparatus there plugged in, and next to that you have the turnout gear area, which what we should have put here, which in hindsight would have been what a new turnout gear could look like, or have the FS1 or FS2.
That's right. Would
have been a good add there. So, but clearly this is not. Yeah, we can tell that this is not what it should be look like. It's fairly unorganized, and it could be handled much differently.
That actually can damage the turnout gear as well, so it shortens the life of the turnout gear by having it in the apparatus bay like that.
That's a really good point. And then what we have next to this is it shows the shoring. We have there's been, and this was going back to our original study, and there's been other studies since the 2013 study focused on the structural concerns with the apparatus bay. As it is an elevated slab, the apparatus there is This area is directly under, I believe right here, we're looking at under engine 5 if we were in the station today. So this shoring that you see here, this supplemental structure was put in following a report that was done by Weston Sampson. They did a structural review of the apparatus, and they recommended adding some shoring that you see here. They actually recommended adding twice as much shoring that was actually installed. So in an effort to support that, and just in most recent events, as in earlier today, we met on site with the structural engineer to review. They had some concerns that water had started to get through the slab, and spalling had started or was getting worse on the underside of the concrete that you see here in the basement. So we looked at that today. There's no immediate concern, but it still reinforces it's obviously not getting better on its own. The shoring that is in place is adequately supporting it, but we are starting to see some more signs of deterioration in that slab. And so what we worked with Jim McCarthy in facilities, and we'll be doing some monitoring of that. We're going to set up a program to basically identify the areas of concern and come back and routinely monitor those areas, make sure we're not getting any additional movement. So we'll be producing a report, an engineered report, following today's visit, and we'll be basically working with Jim and the staff at the department to kind of keep eyes on this and make sure we're monitoring it accurately. So
And that was never meant to be permanent shoring, right? This was to extend the life of. the
Correct,
line.
right.
This was always a temporary.
it was already
solution.
always temporary, correct. So just working with them on that. So just to emphasize, this is an ongoing active concern that we're working with the town on, even as earlier as today. So. Then again, just some more photos showing overall, these are some exterior shots of the deterioration. You can just kind of see it's just Mary Ann touched on a lot of the age of the building, and it's showing itself. So we'll just click through a couple slides here, kind of showing some of the needs. Again, this is interior. These are from the apparatus bay and the stairwell, mostly. Sometimes you can just see some patchwork where walls had been removed and flooring had never been replaced sufficiently. So.
And also not accessible, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
can
yeah,
see
yeah. Again,
doors, stairs. This building doesn't meet any current codes in terms of accessibility.
right. Yeah. More shots of the interior. Just looking at just the state of things. Ceilings, and more shots of the apparatus bay, the restrooms. So why the need for a special town meeting? So we have, basically, you see the timeline laid out here, and the whole reason for the special town meeting is to kind of optimize and be efficient with the time that we have. As you can see, even with the special town meeting, this process concludes in 2027. So there's a lot to be done still. We have, following the town meeting, we'll be getting into the design. So the plan here would be to you'll be bringing on an architect, which may or may not be Doran Whittier Architects, Inc. But we'll have an OPM. There'll also be, you'll bring in an OPM, and then we'll work through for roughly probably 10 to 12 months at a minimum. We'll be working through the design effort, which will include the new facility as well as a temporary facility, which, as we'll talk about later, which is currently being proposed as the American Legion building. And the need for that is because, as you recall from the size of the site, there's no real opportunity to use this site or to build on the site without removing the building. So we will need to relocate. We've been working with the chief to discuss how his operations would be adjusted during that time. So we would put a few more people at, FS2, and then so downsize the FS1 team a little bit, and maybe and then house those at the American Legion, which, again, we can touch on that plan a little bit at the end. We have some photos of that plan as well. So there is a lot to do still, and then the goal would be, and we have the timeline a little bit later as well, but then you'll see after the design you'll be at the town meeting, the election, and then, kind of breaking ground and the start of the project. Construction itself would begin in 2025. Just the answer to the question is to kind of capture as much timeline as we can in this effort, because there is a lot still to be done. Breaking out those phases of the design and through construction. So what we're talking about today in regards to the funding, the bidding through schematic through bidding, is what we're talking about today. So that gets basically to the through bidding, and that will bring us to, we'll have a bid, we'll be able to bid the project and know the numbers, deliver those to town meeting for your regular annual town meeting vote. Those will actually be real numbers from the contractor doing the work. So it'll be a known, have a known commodity when we show up to that meeting. So what you're voting on will be actual and not projected. So these are durations of how long we think these phases should take. And again, so you can see kind of kind of adds up. And then the total at the end would include the construction, but we think 36 to 40 months is pretty. And again, as this is preliminary, we're trying to be as conservative. We don't want to overestimate too much, but we also don't want to promise something we can't deliver. So these are realistic, and these are based on kind of our track record and what we've seen on other similar projects. So that's pretty typical. So this is our design budget. So this is what is composed of the 3.5 request. The green represents the architectural and engineering design. Again, this is through bidding. So it's the architect, it's the structural engineer, it's the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing, the civil, as well as the hazmat companies usually in there as well. There we go. So the other numbers on here are the 450 is for the OPM, who, we kind of approximate them. We have their value approximated, and so we know that they do about 2/3 of their work in construction and about 1/3 up front. So
What does OPM stand for?
Oh, sorry, owner's project manager. So they'll be brought on to kind of help the town, kind of shepherd the town through the process, work with them, work with us. We call it the three-legged stool. You have the contractor, you have the architect and design team, and then you have the OPM.
And the OPM is required by state law.
By state law.
Project of this size.
Yes, correct. That's just the portion of the fee set aside for them, and then the other 250 that is broken up here, we kind of break down and give you an idea of what goes into that. There's a lot of other stuff that gets done during this process, including geotechnical assessments, site surveys, any traffic studies, and we don't know what all these are. So again, this is conservative placeholders. We don't want to be coming back and saying we underestimated this process. So we feel like these are safe numbers, and these are based again on our recent history and what we're seeing on other jobs.
Sorry, the design budget, what's the time frame for that? The duration?
10 to 12 months.
So $450,000 to project manage for 10 to 12 months?
No, the OPM is all the way through bidding,
All the way through?
Yes.
through bidding, right?
Yes, all of this is through bidding. Did I? Yes, if I misrepresented that, yes.
Let's finish up, and then we can
Yep.
go.
We actually have a detailed breakout.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So again, this is all, some of this stuff this is what we see on normal jobs, so we just wanted to account for it here and make sure we're prepared, fiscally prepared for what's going to come in during this bid design process. So again, the report had, the study that was provided did do a whole cost estimate. So this is reflective of that, kind of the project. This is the full project budget, so this has the construction estimate as well as some of the fees we were just talking about doing, kind of where we break out for bidding and then, where we see it going for construction. Kind of see the budgetary numbers there and where we think this lands, big picture. And again, I think the question was asked earlier, maybe pre-meeting, but escalation for the construction project itself is built into that cost estimate that was provided by, so projecting out those years. So that kind of does help level these numbers with other comparables that we might be looking at. So this slide, this is some comparable projects that have been construction escalated through December, through this year. And what these numbers show us, and there's some here that are on the older side, some on the more recent side. This is why we reorganized this maybe from the first version you saw, made it a little bit bigger, but wanted to get a good visual for what we're seeing here, and it's kind of the pre-2020 and the post-2020 breakdown to see really how the market responded to the pandemic and how the construction was affected. So what you see here and kind of what we see is since 2020, kind of those, the cost per square foot using the cost per, because all these projects have things in them that aren't in this project, and we have things that aren't in those projects. So we're never going to get a perfect linear connection to any one project. Like some are more, some are less total square footage. The years are all different, but what this shows is that with those square footages, in the estimate, I think our building was around 800, in the 800, we have roughly just say between the temp ops, we're in that 900 per square foot range, which is in line with a lot of these projects that we're seeing. And even though some of these are combined stations and not, or police stations only, they're all similar in nature. They all have a lot of the same stuff in them. And yes, some of them include a parking garage. And some of those, without knowing the details on those parking garages, it's hard to know how much of an impact they are truly playing, and how they may have their own built-in efficiencies. But what we see is like we're in line. We think we're in line with those numbers, with what we're seeing in the market, and based on our other jobs. I mean, two of our jobs on this list, the Norfolk Fire Station, that one's under construction right now. So that one's pretty comparable of a station, and then I believe Stoughton also just went out, and that's in the lower sevens. But my understanding is that building
That's a substation only.
more of a substation. It's kind of more of a kind of more in line with what FS2, kind of
That's
an
right.
FS2 building.
No public access to that building, no admin spaces, training, any of that. It's just a basic substation.
Yeah. So thought those were interesting, but I think it shows, kind of like we're not an outlier here. We're kind of right in there with some of these other numbers that we're seeing. Mary Ann hit on a lot of these during her intro regarding the history on this. So this kind of breaks down, kind of where we started, the feasibility studies. So it's just kind of creating that timeline, notes the town approvals, also mentions on here the Deerfield Avenue extension, which was kind of was broken out of the police headquarters project and done separately. So we just kind of included that here as a kind of complete the timeline and the kind of what came out of that July 2013, our first study. It wasn't the study. That was when the task force was created. But what came out of that. And then you can see here the completion of the fire headquarters in 2017 and FS2 in October of the same year. End of this year, which was brought up earlier, is the town purchased the American Legion, and we're anticipating they're anticipating issuing RFPs. Oh, sorry, no, wrong slide. This is for the feasibility study that we just completed, so was issued last November. So jumping to January 2023, we were brought on. Centurion, is that how you say it?
Centurion, yeah.
Centurion was brought on to perform the operations and response time studies, which we worked with them on to kind of formulate our data, which the big takeaway for us on that is the response time study showing that the sites that we're looking at, because our study does look at more than just the existing site. That was the preferred site. But we looked at other studies, but one of the things, they had to fit in the response time area. So that was kind of where we kind of linked up with his study to make sure we were in the same area. We were looking at assessing sites. October completed the feasibility study. So there's a note here about, and this is all, so there's a plan to advertise, design, and OPM services for the new FS1. We have special town meetings scheduled for 1/17. You'll bring on an architect. So now that's what we know so far. From here on, all these dates are approximate durations and, our best guess at kind of where these might land, but very hopeful. So April 2025 would be bidding. Annual town meeting would be kind of following, and then the election and then town meeting with bids in hand would be May 2025. Construction for Fire Station 1 would begin June 2025. So this is basically kind of an estimated timeline for construction. Would be the award in June. Contractor starts his procurement phase, so I'll start getting his contractors under contract. At which time, the first order of business would be to kind of renovate that American Legion space, get that ready, and then December, give that about, 6 months or so, and then we would have the department move to the temporary ops location, the American Legion. We'd have on-site construction would start in January 2026. Completing with demo, and then substantial completion would be July of 2027, and then final project roughly, when everything's finished up, we'd be looking at probably around December of 2027 for the project final.
So if I could maybe add to that and answer the previous question, the OPM and architect fees, basically that takes us up until June of 2025, when the town meeting would happen and the bid would be in hand. So even though the documents would take closer to 12 months to do, the OPM would be managing that process all the way up until June 2025 on that contract, until it would be awarded and construction would start.
Yeah. So, and then just to wrap up, just a quick focus on the temporary ops. So the existing building, the existing American Legion building, purchased by the town. The idea here is we've walked this building. It's in good shape. There are a lot of the accessibility that would be needed to make this the structure. The accessible structure that it needs to be is there. It might need some refining, but a lot of what we need is there. Inside, what we would be doing is, what you see here in the plans is making accommodations for the fire department from a temporary in nature, but there'd be things in there that we would want to make kind of more like accessible restrooms in a smart location, so that that's something that this building would have if, when the department moves out, you know, they're gonna take some walls down because they're not gonna need dorm rooms or, you know, some of the other spaces that we're gonna provide, or maybe they don't need as many. Maybe you want a big open space instead of all those office spaces that you see. So those walls, you know, would come down, but we'd want to be able to be doing some updating to this building so that it is ready for its next use, you know, without having to get some of those big ticket items off the list as part of this process. And I think that's a really good for this building, good for the town, and gives you kind of a new lease on life, if you will, for this building moving forward, and opens it up for other opportunities for the town.
Thank you very much. That was quite a bit more granular than I expected, but appreciated.
Yeah.
Because even though tonight, the only thing that's before the town is whether or not we're gonna pay for the design and bid documents and not the whole building.
Right.
It's good to know what the general idea of the project is all about, so thank you very much. Before I open it up to the commission for questions, let me start it off. And I'm gonna do this Article 1 first and put that to bed, and then we can go to Article 2. So, just to make sure that I understand it correctly, Article 1 is not asking for any borrowing authority.
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So it's not gonna increase the town's debt? There's not gonna be any debt service associated with this?
That's correct.
Just wanna make that clear, right?
Talking about free cash allocation.
Okay. And so, a question for Dorn and Whittier. What is the process now for, assuming we go forward?
Yep.
Okay. What's your vision for the process of getting input for the actual design of the interior of the building?
Yeah, you want to grab that?
Yeah,
Yeah, go for it.
So basically, if we're the ones who would continue on, we would take the study that we've done so far, we would sit down with the department again. We'd want to get a more granular approach to meeting with more of the department, more department heads, more individuals from the town that are stakeholders. We want to get every stakeholder involved as possible, and we will actually go through room by room.
Well, let's hope you get more than 50% of the department this time.
Absolutely, that's right. But we will go through room by room, break down all of the needs, document everything that would be needed in each individual space going forward, and nothing would get completed until basically that was signed off on by the department and the town.
Okay, anybody else from the commission? Seth?
Assuming we move forward with this plan, does that lock us into this 36,000 square foot, just a detailed design of that, or will we see optionality in terms of the 25,000 square foot design or 30,000 square foot design? What optionality and decisions will we still have after this point?
Say 100% flexibility. I mean, things can change quickly, right? So it's,
Maybe no clock tower?
there could not be.
Right.
Not that I'm against it, but I just, go ahead.
The biggest space component of the building are the apparatus bays, right? So, and the way the building stacks, you've got 5 apparatus bays across the front, right? So if you want to make significant reductions, it would be by removing apparatus bays and finding alternate ways and locations to house those, and then figuring out how else you would want to reduce the building.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we understand that, because I know in 2014, we did the same feasibility study. And we went from our 14.8 thousand square foot building, existing building, the proposal, the same apparatus bays was 17.9 K square feet.
Yeah.
And we're saying this current proposal, it's the same apparatus bays, give or take a little bit. I mean, we're not really growing the apparatus bays, but we've doubled the size of the entire building in 8 years. And that's just why I'm hoping if we go forward,
Sure.
we're still looking at that low layer of optionality for does this scale for the growth of the town, but also making frugal decisions?
Absolutely. Yeah, nothing is locked in at this point.
So I have a question. From what I understand, the number that was derived for the design and bid was a function of the square feet. So if the square footage of the design changes materially, does the design and bid fee change as well?
Yeah, so the allocation that we're seeking today, the 3.5, was really just, we were asked, take a high-level approach, take a look, and we don't want to be low, because, you wouldn't want to, have to go back and ask for more. But, so we think it's a pretty safe number, but by no means is that the number that you're actually signing up for. It's a budgetary number. When we get in there and we start to look at the stuff that, maybe it does go down, and then that fee would be adjusted based on that. So if it goes up, it goes up. You're not locked into a floor plan, and you're not locked into a price.
Christina, any follow-up from when you asked before?
Oh, I have no further questions.
All right, go ahead. Alex?
Yeah, just a sort of related question to what Seth asked. $3.5 million, how much would that number change if this was, say, a $25 million project versus a $30-something million project? Would that go down by a couple $100,000, or are we talking material changes?
So, yeah, usually, it's percentage based, so I think, so I think, and it was mentioned maybe at the last meeting, usually 10 to 12% is usually what you would see on construction cost, what you would see for these design fees. So that's pretty safe. If it comes down, you just look at roughly 10% is probably a good estimate of where the fee lands.
I assume there's a fair amount of fixed costs of project management that doesn't change, with every 1,000 square feet that's added, things that, might not change.
There are things on a small building that you do that we would do exactly, but you still have to be done on a large building. Correct.
So this amount of money, 3.5, could cover a building that's 20% smaller because the fixed costs are there. So that's not, changing anything. Thank you.
John?
Yes, of the $3.5 million design bid cost, how much of that is associated with the American Legion renovation?
So the fee, that's a good question. I don't know, well, if you use the 10%,
Can we get back to you on
yeah,
that?
that's one, we can kind of drill down on that number and kind of give you a ballpark on what that would, where you think that lands.
Is there just a design cost for that building involved in that number, or is the actual construction cost for the renovation just
All design, yeah. So, right.
Do we have a construction cost number?
We do. I think, going from memory, but I think the construction cost at American Legion, I believe, was $270 a square foot.
And just the total cost of construction?
For the American Legion building?
Yes, I don't know the square footage of the building.
Is that on the, I don't know, that made our budget slide.
Yeah, I apologize. I know we have it broken down in the bigger feasibility study. I don't know if we have it.
Yeah, no, I don't think we have it here. We can get you both of those, though.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
George?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First for the consultants and then for the select board. For the consultants, you mentioned the fact we're still doing an elevated building, but one of the problems we've had with this fire station number 1 is the fact it's an elevated building. Are we setting ourselves up for 10 years down the road having problems with an elevated building?
Good question.
And how many, and I guess as part of that, have you designed any other fire stations? I know the Needham number 2 is an elevated building, but I'm curious about that.
Yeah, let me take the first part.
Yeah, go for it.
So the first answer to your question is the way the floor plans are set up, only actually the back part of the apparatus bay is about 30% are elevated. The rest is actually on grade, so there's actually a retaining wall underneath. So the large percentage of the weight of the apparatus will actually be supported on grade, not elevated. Only some of the small apparatus that will be in the back, some trailers, those type of things will be on an elevated slab. And actually, we have done this recently, and we've done it several times. But if you want, maybe talk about Dedham.
Yeah, so Dedham, the footprint in Dedham, the building you see above ground is, although large, the footprint under the building is much larger, and in that, so we have underground parking there. It's called a parking garage, but it's really underground parking, and including the apparatus apron itself. So basically, if you were to go down the street on Bryan Street in Dedham, you have the sidewalk. On the back side of that sidewalk, you have a retaining wall that goes straight down. So the entire apparatus bay apron and then the wall 60 feet in, that's all roof essentially. The parking on the side of the building is also a parking lot, and that's also under, there's parking underneath that parking lot. That's a surface lot. So we have done it before. It's an excellent question, and it's nothing that, it's something you think about, but the engineers account for it all, and Jason mentioned this earlier, we're accounting for it with today's apparatus. The building that we have right now that's filing was designed with lightweight apparatus, and we're dealing with much heavier apparatus now. So the building that is dealing with apparatus that it wasn't meant to deal with.
Our structural engineers have much better tools now that they did back then as well for analysis.
What's the contingency percentage you built into your numbers?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
There's several contingencies built in.
Yes. Yeah, there's, at this point especially, because there's still a design contingency in the number as well.
I'm concerned about the construction contingency, because that's the
Yep.
one issue. I want to make sure we have built in sufficient contingency.
Yeah, we didn't, we would have gone industry standard here. There's no, at this point in the project, there's no sense in trying to say it's just 1%.
No, but I
So
think in our
it's-
projects, we've been way above 1%.
Oh, yeah, that's my point. So, we could get you those figures. I think it's 5.
I was going to say 5, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's 5.
The other one is, this may be a technical question. I don't know if you can answer this or not. Do you happen to know what ISO level we are as a fire department?
Typically, yes. And we had some of those early conversations. We know that this is going to be a Category 4 building, and that is accounted for in the construction costs already. So when we do this, it's very conservative from a design and cost standpoint going in, making all of those assumptions that this is going to be at the highest level in Category 4 type building, and then we can come back from there if we need to.
Do you know, will it affect positively our ISO rating, our insurance rating?
It should.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right. My next question really is one for the select board, and it comes from the perspective that people have heard me say, I really think the challenges facing Westwood are not in the operating budget, they're going to be in the capital budget. And I see, while we're being asked to vote on additional money to reach the 3.5 million, we're really starting to go down the path of a potential $40 million project. So one question for you, and then I want to shift to the select board. How comfortable are you with that estimate of $40 million? Because given inflation, given the fact we're not going to go out to bid for what, 12 months, 12, 15 months?
Correct.
What's your comfort range with the $40 million number?
I think I'm comfortable with it. I mean, I think it does, we have it factored in to the cost estimate. I'm not going to, there's no guarantees. I mean, nobody would have, in 2019, would have anticipated, the spikes that we've seen. So you can't be sure about anything, but based on what we know today, and foreseeing what we can foresee, based on our experience and other projects that we've seen.
And if I could add to that too, we use a professional estimator to do all of these for us. So they are looking at industry trends across the board, not just here in New England, but across the country, and not just public safety buildings, but all types of buildings. They are very knowledgeable about what's going on in the market.
So if I assume you're $40 million, and then I turn to the select board, my assumption is in that fiscal year that we go forward, we'll probably have another, I'm guessing $10 million of items in addition to this 40 million. Probably $5 million is for the school roofs and the HVAC system at the Thurston, and there always is $3 to $5 million of borrowing we need to do. So I'm at a number of 50 million, which, given current interest rates, is not that far away from what we had to borrow to the net borrowing for the new Pine Hill School. And it's going to be a significant cost. So my question to the select board, since you have authorized a feasibility study for both the school and the municipal side, do you envision bringing forward any other major capital projects before we're asked to vote on this $40 million, okay? Because that is of deep concern to me, because I personally feel, I just don't see, in my own personal opinion, a lot of capacity. I wish we had more capacity. We may have some theoretical range, but I just don't think we have the feasibility as a town to fund it. So my question is there something we as a Finance and Warrant Commission need to be aware of? Are there any other major articles? And I'm not talking about an emergency. Something happens, it happens, I understand that. But on the long-range financial planning, there's a list of projects, and I don't think they felt comfortable prioritizing those until you got done with the feasibility study. So my just question is, do you anticipate any other major borrowing, capital or borrowing article as we think about this $40 to $50 million commitment we're going to end up making?
I guess I would answer that, George, that you know what we know, right? Our meetings are public, our discussions are public. You've heard those discussions. And I think what we're doing a really good job of is taking a very deliberate look at what are the needs, how to prioritize them, and taking this really deep dive in the facilities. So there is no grand plan in the back room with the wizard here, and I'm not trying to make light of your question. I think together as a community, we're trying to figure out what the priorities should be going forward. The board is very clear on this being a priority, and it's been a need in town, as you're aware, for a very long time. And the issues regarding the structural issues are very concerning. And as we've seen in the past, we've gotten to the point with some of our very aged buildings where it becomes an emergency, you know, when the Hanlon roof was coming down. We don't want to get to that point with our public safety buildings.
Right, and that's why, Mary Ann, I was assuming $5 million to take care of some of the roofing issues I'm aware of, especially on the school side, and another $5 million, because there's always going to be something coming up. But my big concern is if I look at the list that the long-range financial planning group is looking at, basically, in my mind, I don't see any of those projects coming forward before we deal with this $40 million. If for any reason you thought there was one that needed to come forward, I'd want to know that before, frankly, we get through tonight's vote, but before I certainly started considering the $40 million issue.
George, I would say this to you, this is the priority.
All right, good, okay. All right.
Any other questions from the commission? Alex?
One more question for Dora Whittier. Based on the assessments you've done, the feasibility studies, the surveys, you know, looking at different site options and alternatives, would you guys consider this proposed project, the $30 to $40 million project, in the good, better, or best category for what the town needs, you know, taking everything into consideration?
It's
I would say better. It's
definitely
not,
better.
It's not the best. We scaled that back.
We scaled it back, I was gonna say,
Right.
and that was part of that exercise, like, we started big picture, give us everything you want, and then it's like, okay, what do we need? And then kind of like you build back after that, so to say best would be an overstatement.
Right.
It's definitely better.
And
Even after
and
2X, the
some of that
2014
process
plan?
is still ongoing, right?
Yes, that's right, correct.
Correct.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's only the better option even after 2Xing the size of the 2014 plan?
Yeah, it really is. Some of that relates to code changes, right, that are necessary. Some of it's related to staff changes, apparatus growth, all those type of things. But going through it, this really, and looking at our other projects, size-wise, this is right in the appropriate range.
We didn't grow the apparatus space.
No, based on the current apparatus needs.
There is growth in.
Yeah, there
in
is
the-
some growth involved as well, right? We wanted to make sure that
1,000
there is
square feet.
some plan for that,
Right.
yeah.
So I understand Sean Weller has some questions.
Sean, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. And I appreciate some of the questions from some of my fellow members. I think it's been helpful and in the direction of everything I've written down as well. So also for Dora Whittier, in that same vein, if you had to optimize this further, how would you do so given what you've seen with other projects in New England? And what would we be trading off with as a town with those optimizations?
It's a lot of that.
Yeah, you know, I think I would want to consult with the department on that and find out what is critical for them. You know, I wouldn't want to answer in terms of program and downsizing without having their input. So I would say it would be up to the department to determine their needs, and then we would do our best to try to optimize that plan and footprint to meet whatever that final need is.
Anything else, Sean?
then maybe question for the select board then, which would be, if, as the select board thinks about this situated with all our other priorities, as George mentioned, the Sheehan School, Thurston, we've moved things that come up, town hall's been on the agenda for a while, and we may have other things that emerge, whether it's as crises or just long-range financial priorities for us going forward. Has the select board considered how we might be able to make this, say, $5 or $10 million less to help, lessen the burden of some of those other things that may come down the road, and fit, fit more things into the town's appetite for new debt?
Sean, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think your question is, have we thought about how we can make this $5 or $10 million less, if I understand your question. Do I have it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not, I think, the question we're asking, Sean. I think the question we've asked of Doran Whittier in doing this feasibility, in working with our fire department, is what do we need as a town now so that we have a functional Fire Station 1, and what are we going to need there for the next 50 years? Because this building is going to be built to last at least 50 years. So I think that is where we need to focus. There has been some engineering done and described. This is not the Taj Mahal. It's not the best. It's the better. But the question is, what do we need to be adequate and to provide the kind of department station that we need? So that's really the question. And again, we've worked with Doran Whittier. We've had a very valuable relationship with them, which has been very successful with our other public safety buildings. So there is a level of trust with respect to the work that they do and the analysis that they've done. So that's how I would answer you, Sean.
All right, thanks. I appreciate that. And one more question, which, again, you may be able to speak to here. So I recognize for us and everyone watching, clarify sort of the decision to ask the town to come together for a special meeting for this, rather than address this in our ordinary spring meeting. And there was a slide that was very helpful with the timeline towards this end. I think slide 8 is the reason for this to hopefully achieve a ballot question for the town by April of 2025.
The reason for the special town meeting is because, number one, we feel that there is an urgent need based on the issues that we've heard described tonight as far as the structural issues, many of which have been known for a long time. And also, to your point, Sean, as you know, there are issues, seasonal issues with respect to construction that we have to think about. So yes, if we can get this funding in place for design, we should be in place by the spring of '25 to go to a ballot and a vote on the construction, and we would like to get that done as soon as possible.
I just had one programming question. So you had described the real driver of the square footage being the programming needs of the department. What would the programming need be for the 2,100-ish square feet of public space in a fire department?
Yeah, good question. So some of that is a shared meeting room, so a space similar to this. That would double as a training space for the department. That would include bathrooms that would go with that.
Sean Weller.
Has left the conference.
A lobby space, vestibule that's required by code, things of that nature. So that's the bulk of it.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
And actually, I wanted to follow up on one thing to your previous question about the previous study from 2014, because I realized that maybe that wasn't clear. The number that's there, that 17,000, that is only the fire department portion of a public safety building, right? So that was a much larger building overall. That number doesn't include infrastructure and some of the other things related that were shared with the police department. So that's only half the building. from that previous study. That was a shared police, fire department building, that study.
That's an issue. I'd like to review that more later then, because
Yeah.
that's listed as part of the FS1 comparison, so.
Yeah, correct. So, and if you look in the study, there's a full detailed breakout of that in the feasibility study, and
I
there's a
did.
column. It says, 2014 fire department, portion of public safety building.
So are you saying there would be shared spaces like training and?
That was all factored into that study, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons for that big, that
And
significant
the shared
difference.
spaces aren't included in the 17, is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Bill, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. So I know part of this is the American Legion and setting that up as a temporary space. Did you look at alternative spaces like the Deerfield School, which will be vacated of students by then and has far more square footage and probably some more amenities and wouldn't need as much construction work? So did you look at alternative sites like that as opposed to the American Legion?
Discussed, I would say. It was
Enjoy the
discussed.
conference.
It wasn't, we didn't look at it actively there just because we weren't directed to. But it was discussed, and it's definitely something that could be looked at pretty quickly when
I'll
available.
recognize Chris Coleman to answer that question.
Sure.
Just to be clear, the board does not have care, custody, control of the vehicle.
That was the
That's
reason.
under the school committee.
That was
So that would have to be, something else would have to happen before that would be considered for a temporary station.
But the school could theoretically rent it to the town to use?
At a nominal fee, I hope, right?
Hope so.
Any other questions from the commission?
Thanks, Chris.
Did you guys ever give thought to maybe using this as the shared space, because it's right across the street for training? Rather than,
As a shared space for,
like, training?
this community space has quite an extensive use of, so to bring the fire department over, on top of that, I think it also there's a number of different ways that can go on in the training in the fire station. So we have firefighters on Station 2.
Yeah, right.
As well as Station 1. And all departments have to train on certain days. So if you're ever driving by Station 1, you see a number of apparatus right in front of the base, that's because they're have a department-wide training.
There's sometimes equipment involved with that
Yes.
training as well.
And often it's equipment involved in the training.
All right, I just have one more question for the select board, and it goes to John Kerry's question about why a special town meeting. As you know, nothing is without cost in this life, and there is a cost to holding a special town meeting. So I'm asking the select board, you think that's a cost that we should incur, and we're gonna get some benefit from that long-term?
Absolutely. I mean, we certainly don't take the decision to hold a special town meeting lightly,
Okay.
given that. And as I said before, we view it as a matter that is urgent and that we need to take advantage of time being on our side before, hopefully nothing else happens with respect to that building, and so
Right.
that we can get it done, presuming
Yep.
that once we bring a bid in hand to another town meeting, that the residents will vote to approve that.
Okay. At this time, I'll open it up for questions from the public on Article 1. Do we have anybody who's watching live have any questions?
They can't.
You can't accommodate that, all right, so. All right, on to question 2.
No, okay, question 2, you're right, then we'll do that, then we'll do the, then we'll close it.
Yeah.
All right, question 2.
Okay, I think you're
we good?
excused.
All right.
Thank you
Gentlemen,
very much.
Thank you all.
Very,
Thank you
Thank you very much.
You've done very nice work for the town in the past, most appreciated.
Thank you very much.
And I know you'll bring in the bids at 39.5, okay?
Thank you.
And I love the clock tower.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
While they're getting set, Mary Ann, Doran Whittier alluded to the fact that the select board asked them to put the clock tower in for some historical reason. Can you?
I don't know if that was the fire department. I got the impression, it wasn't the select board.
It was to bring a portion of Station 2 over to this conceptual design for Station 1.
We can do without that. All right, on to Article 2.
Yes, I will defer to Stephanie McManus, our Director
Hi.
of Finance.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So I am here to start off and give a background on Article 2, which we're calling the debt housekeeping for the fire department multi-purpose vehicle. So in 2021, town meeting authorized borrowing of $400,000 for a fire department multi-purpose vehicle. That debt was issued in April of 2022. And since then, we have learned that that piece of equipment will no longer be purchased. So the purpose of this article is to abandon that project and reappropriate the funds to another capital project to reduce the borrowing authority for that. So I'm just going to read through it. Is that okay to do? And then sort of break it down into easier terms to understand. So the purpose of the article is to see if the town will vote to abandon the purchase of a fire multi-purpose vehicle for which $400,000 was authorized to be borrowed under Article 12 of the annual town meeting held on May 3rd, 2021, and then transfer the $400,000 borrowed for that purpose to pay a portion of the cost for the Hanlon School project, so-called, which was approved by the vote of town under Article 1 of the warrant at the town meeting held on October 18th, 2021, thereby reducing the $84,610,386 authorized to be borrowed to pay the cost of that project by $400,000 or to take any action thereunto. So that's just what was written by bond counsel. It basically means we have those funds, the $400,000 currently from debt that was issued in April of 2022. We are just looking to move those funds to another ongoing project. It will not add funds to that project budget. It will just reduce the overall authority that would need to be borrowed.
Stephanie, it's my understanding that bond counsel had to give you guidance in terms of which products you could apply it to. It was also affected by timelines, so you didn't have a lot of flexibility in terms of where you could put the money. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I only highlight the April 2022 date just for that reason. So there are term borrowing limits when we go out for debt. Especially in this case, you have 2 years to spend those funds, which is coming up in April of 2024. So we're just a few months away from that. The town could be in trouble if that did not happen, so we're just looking, that's why we call it a housekeeping item. We're not borrowing more funds, we're not increasing project budgets, we're just looking to appropriate these funds to a project where we can be in compliance with law.
Have the $84 million been borrowed?
So that's a great question because a piece of the limits on what we can use this for is that it's a project that could not have been borrowed long-term. And I double-checked on this. Since $60 million has been borrowed to date for the project, we still have authorized but outstanding debt. So this will be applied towards that portion. So we have not gone long-term for the rest of the elementary school project.
And what was the interest rate that the bond was issued for the $400,000? Do you remember?
I do not know at this time. I can get back to you. It was not just the $400,000. It was a larger bond that went out at that time, and the $400,000 actually came in as bond proceeds.
So, I mean, get back to me before we vote. It's not likely, but.
Well, I don't know what the interest rate, though.
It's safe to say, though, that it would be less than what it would be if you borrowed it today.
Correct, but I just want to understand the question a little bit more. We're not borrowing $400,000.
No, we already borrowed $400,000.
Correct.
Right? And we borrowed it at an interest rate that is likely less than what it would be if we went out today and borrowed $400,000.
I'm going to say overall, most likely, yes.
Right. And that's what we would have to do with the remaining authorized borrowing for the Pine Hill School if we had to do that. I mean, eventually we'll have to do that.
Correct. So whatever we have left to borrow for that project, this will reduce that amount by $400,000, which is a good thing.
At a substantially lower interest rate.
I'm just trying to connect the interest
Well, the $400,000 that we already have
Yep.
is at a substantially lower interest rate than the interest that we're going to get charged on the rest what we borrow.
Let me see if this answers the question. So we're not paying interest on the $400,000 because it came in as bond proceeds from the
Oh.
original borrowing.
Oh, okay.
So it is just cash sitting there. We're not paying interest on it.
Oh.
There's no downside.
But if you had to borrow the $400,000 today, it would cost you more than borrowing $400,000 or getting bond proceeds in the past.
That's pretty
So it's a
safe
good
to say.
thing financially all around.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
And there's no fire department project that qualifies.
No, I know,
I
it's,
knew you
no,
wanted
it's a good question. So
I had to put that in.
I think it goes back to. This could be applied towards another project, one that is either going to be approved or already approved. However, it's the spending limits that we need to be within, and we have to have money, that money out the door by April of 2024. And I just don't see any project that could be approved before then, and then also have this applied and bought. Any piece of equipment, say a fire department project or piece of large equipment, I mean, the lead times on those are
I know
12 months plus.
We've authorized borrowing for a ladder truck, but that actually is not going to get borrowed for a couple of years.
And more than that, it won't even, if it was ordered, we don't pay until things are in-house.
Right,
We don't
that's what I'm
prepay,
getting
so
at.
yes, it wouldn't be able to go out the door in time.
All right. Any other questions from the commission?
Just a quick
Alex?
question. This seems pretty straightforward, but what would option B be if we said, no, we don't want to allocate this to the Pine Hill School?
No, it's a great question. So we went through, and this is sort of what I went back and forth with our financial advisors and bond counsel. There was a list of a few different projects. We looked at what we've authorized recently, say at the last town meeting, there was the cemetery construction project. That's funded specifically by user fees. It was the fire ladder truck, which was one that I originally had thought of. We can't spend the funds in time. This is really the best option. And it also goes towards reducing the cost of exempt debt, which is a positive because it's less that is added on to the tax bill eventually.
And this could not be moved to
Yes.
free cash flow?
I'm sorry, say it again?
This cannot be moved to free cash flow? To free cash?
No, it has to be applied to a capital project that would require borrowing.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like it's fairly net neutral to town.
Correct.
No winners or losers here, and there's no obvious second choice for where this money would go.
Correct, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Quick question, is there any
Yeah.
urgency to this, or could we vote on this at regular town meeting?
The urgency is that it has to be authorized for us to move the funds before April of 2024.
And the special town meeting is the only way to do that?
We have to have, Mass General Law, what this comes from is Mass General Law 44, Section 20. It says that town meeting has to authorize us to do this.
It has to be town meeting action. If we waited to the annual town meting, we would be beyond that date, so we have to have a special town meeting in order to
It would
take
be
action.
on that date,
It would
sorry?
be beyond. the
Okay,
date.
and then
There's-
what would happen to that $400,000 if it was beyond that date?
Well, then that's a.
So
that's a-
it would still be sitting with us, and we would be not in compliance with law, meaning we would have arbitrage possibilities. Towns are not allowed to just borrow money and have it sit for long periods of time and earn interest and make money off of it. So we have limits for how we have to spend, the spending schedule for every debt we issue, and it just has to be in compliance with that.
So we have to have a special town meeting before regular town meeting?
Fire station aside, we'd need it anyway
Right.
to solve for this?
Yes.
If we were to have waited till May, and we could be in serious trouble with, we could have issues. I don't want to talk in hypotheticals. I am happy that this special town meeting is going to be able to clean this up.
Any other questions from the commission? Sean?
He didn't have any questions.
Okay. Any questions on Article 2 from the public? Seeing none,
Okay, so I guess,
then we move on.
so what we need to do now is close our public hearing.
Let me just confirm that Article 3 has been withdrawn.
Article 3 has been withdrawn.
All right.
All right, so now what we're going to do is take a roll call to close our public hearing, and then we will go into our deliberations and we will vote. But let's, can you take the roll call to close the public hearing, please? Yes.
Oh, they have to close.
Does he have to do that first?
Yeah.
All right, well, let us do ours, and then you can do yours. How about that? Okay, go.
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
John Kerry,
Wait, hang on, Victoria.
Give a motion.
Yeah,
Motion to close the
I'm
meeting?
sorry.
second. All right, go ahead. was Jim.
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
John Kerry,
Yes.
Jim Ferrero,
Yes?
Seth Feddersen,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
Caitlin Dursock,
Yes.
George Marone,
Yes.
Christina Pedulix,
Yes.
Chris Perota,
Yes.
Sean Weller,
I will interpret that as a yes.
Sean, is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Alex Yell.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to go into our deliberations, but I want to take this moment to thank you, Madam Chair, or Chairperson.
Let them close their meeting.
Oh, we got to close your meeting. Go
Madam
ahead and
Chair,
close your
motion to
meeting. I'll
close
thank
the
you.
select board meeting?
Roll call. Joe? Rob? Aye. I vote aye as well.
We do help each other. I seriously want to thank you so very much. You had all the burden presenting on behalf of the select board, having Dorn Whittier up with you, and I just want to thank you very much for your preparation. I think a lot of thought went into the material that got put together, so thank you so very much. I think you listened very carefully to some of the concerns, and in my opinion, you addressed 2/3 of them before we had a chance to ask the questions, so thank you so very much.
Thank
Okay?
you all very much.
Thank you.
That's great.
All right, how do you want to do this?
All right, so, do we have to open?
No, we just, we've closed.
We
and now
closed the public hearing, and now,
we-
all right, so now we're at the part where we are discussing, and let's go article by article. So we're discussing Article 1, and the question before us now is whether or not we recommend to town meeting that they approve Article 1, or recommend to town meeting that they indefinitely postpone Article 1. Any thoughts from anybody on the commission?
I'll share thoughts. I think it's clear from the studies, the information provided. I personally saw the fire station last week, and it's clear that it's in disrepair, both structurally and, from a perspective of people inhabiting that building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. So I would say that the station is clearly needed on all fronts and from all perspectives. I think there's a fair amount of concern over the ultimate price tag of this future building, but today we're focused on approving the funds, these $3.5 million for the design and feasibility. And to the answer to Seth's question, the scope of the final project could grow, could shrink, based on what takes place over the next 12 months. And based on my question of, if this were a $25 million project, I don't know if this $3.5 million would be significantly different. So in my opinion, I think it's a need for the town, and at this moment, at this phase, I think we should be concerned about moving into this next phase as opposed to the ultimate final price tag, which should come to light in the next 12 months.
Yeah, it's clear to me that this is the highest priority capital project in the town. Just taking what Dorn Whittier said would be the size of the building and their estimate, $40 million, 40,000 square feet, that's $1,000 a square foot. So I really do hope, and I was pleased to hear that the design phase will tease that out a little bit and make sure that we come more in line with the other buildings that we've seen them do, maybe down around the $850 per square foot mark, but we'll see how it goes. But in terms of the question before us now, I think we should go forward. Seth?
Yeah, I was just to kind of echo that. I think looking at the plans that Dorn and Whittier provided and the facts on the table, I think there's 5,000 to 12,000 square feet of bloat across the number of offices, number of storage rooms. Looking at the plans, looking at their details, I still agree we should move forward with this and get into that next phase as the priority for the fire station.
Seth, I'm also very impressed with the fact that you're probably one of the few members who read all the detailed report in thoroughness. No, I really thank you for doing that, because all of us focus on different things, and it's good to know that you dove in right away to some of the detail.
Yeah, I agree. We have to move forward with doing the assessment and going with Select Board 1. I think after you see the pictures, I watched the video, the other meeting with the chief the other day. I'm actually, as a underwriter and risk manager kind of frightened by the building, and it makes my spidey senses kind of stick up from an underwriter standpoint. But I think, you know, similar to the rest of you, I definitely have concerns about the overall cost of the project. You know, that range goes from $990 a square foot, because I did the math, to $1124 a square foot at the 40 million. So but that's not before us today, and I think we shared some of that, and I'll take it into consideration. I also like that it's just coming from free cash. It's not going to impact taxes or anything like that, this money as well. So that's kind of, I'm in line with everyone else here.
And in my opinion, this represents a lot of years of work in town, how we have improved the quality of not only of our public safety facilities, but of our public safety staffing. I think Westwood can, the same way we're deeply proud of our DPW, we have the best plowed roads of any town around here. I think we're reaching a level of care, both on the medical side and on the firefighting side, that 10 years ago was a dream. And I think we've accomplished a lot of it through a lot of work, a lot of people. So I would endorse this wholeheartedly. I'm very pleased that the members of this committee are focusing on the cost. I think it is an obligation, and I'm going to rely very heavily that we make sure we continue to do that, you know, to try and bring in the best building we can, but at the best cost we can too. Because I'll repeat myself again, I think our biggest challenge is Rob's got a list of things the town needs to get done. And it takes money to do it. And having just done the Pine Hill School and now getting ready to do this fire station, we've accomplished a lot, but there's still a lot more need in town. So we got to watch our costs carefully. But I wholeheartedly endorse this and thank the select board for all the work they've done in getting us to this point.
Yeah, and the timing of it, I think, warrants a special town meeting.
Yep.
It's important. The interest rates, not so much anymore. In fact, they may even go down.
Yep.
If we get to May. But in terms of timing, to get it designed and built in the shortest possible time, I think it warrants a special town meeting. Any other comments from the commission?
Yeah, I definitely have a comment. So our firefighters deserve the best that we can possibly offer. We are not giving them the best at the moment. We have to do something. I am a little concerned about us having a cognitive bias. We spend that $3.5 million and then we just keep going forward. And we're not really factoring in the other projects that we really truly do need to do. So I'm a little bit apprehensive about that. But yeah, I mean, we need a new fire station.
So do you want a motion?
So, yeah, can
I'll
I
make
get
a motion to approve
Second.
Article 1.
And it's seconded by Seth?
George.
George, seconded by George.
We have to do a roll call now?
Yes, since Sean, yeah.
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
John Kerry,
Yes.
And then, wait a minute, this is a motion to recommend that the town meeting vote to approve
Yes.
Article 1.
Article 1, yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
redo it.
Yep.
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
John Kerry,
Yes.
Jim Farrell,
Yes.
Seth Frederickson,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
Caitlin Dursock,
yes.
George Marone,
Yes.
Christina Kajewicz,
Yes.
Chris Peretta,
Yes.
Sean Weller,
Yeah.
And Alex Yell.
Yes.
All right, moving on to Article 2. Any discussion from the commission on Article 2?
Seems pretty straightforward.
I didn't understand until just now that we needed to do this before April 1st, or the town's going to be in financial hot water, as it were. The state financial police will come down upon Stephanie and put the handcuffs in her, so.
And Stephanie's team is actually a very good watchdog and keeping an eye on these types of things, because this is the type of thing that could slip through the cracks, so.
Yeah, easily.
Thank you for
Yeah.
picking up on this.
I'll make a motion to vote to recommend Article 2.
I'll second.
All right,
Roll
call the
call.
roll.
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
John Kerry,
Yes.
Jim Farrell,
Yes.
Seth Frederickson,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
Caitlin Dursock,
yes.
George Marone,
Yes.
Christina Kajewicz,
Yes.
Chris Peretta,
Yes.
Sean Weller,
Yes.
and Alex Yell.
Yes.
So we will record those as a unanimous vote on both.
On both,
On
yes.
both.
And this
Excellent.
concludes our meeting on the special town meeting.
Right, so now we've got to What do we have to do? Do a roll call to open up reopen up our regular meeting?
Why not?
We already did. We opened
So
up.
it's a motion.
We already said?
Town council is nodding in the affirmative, so let's do that.
I have to do it? Okay.
And if I may, you want to talk of who's going to write up for your,
I've already volunteered the vice chair to do the write-ups, okay? Because we've got
We got that well in hand.
well in hand. Thank you very much. I will work with the vice chair on
inside
that.
baseball, I didn't know.
Right, we'll do it together. I don't want to put that burden on everybody else. So with that, can you do a roll call to open up?
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
John Kerry,
Yes.
Jim Farrow,
Yes.
Seth Frederickson,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
Caitlin Jerslock,
Yes.
George Morone,
Yes.
Christina Pedowitz,
Yes.
Chris Peretta,
Yes.
Sean Weller,
Yes.
and Al Ciel.
Yes.
Okay,
Further
so,
point of order, Mr. Chairman, I think you need to close the public, did you close the
Yes.
public hearing already? Yeah.
We did, I thought we
I
did.
thought we did.
Okay,
Yes.
fair enough.
Thank you. I want to thank you for sharing that very,
Okay.
very much. A good tag team here. So I guess what we'll do now is I want to welcome members of the planning board or Nora, whoever you want to come up. But I just want to make a comment. I actually watched the entire planning board meeting last evening, and I want to get a little star for doing it. But I will tell you that I was extremely impressed with the quality of the conversation and the work being done by the planning board. I especially watched it on the 22 Everett Street project. I think it requires a tremendous attention to detail and perseverance to be able to be as thorough as you were on that product. So I just wanted to compliment you. It's actually was sort of long but interesting to watch. So I want to welcome Nora, if you want to come up, or any members of the planning board who want to sit with you.
So we'll have our
I
planning
see some
board
of the other
chair.
members, and I want to welcome them too. So,
Bill, do you
welcome.
want to just
It's up
pull
to
a
you.
chair up? So we don't actually have a quorum here of the planning
Okay.
board, so we do not need to open a meeting. We have Ellen Rawlings, our chair.
Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. We have Phil Giordano, who's a planning board member.
Yep.
And Amanda Wolf, who is our housing and land use specialist. Planner. but
Welcome.
that's okay. Housing and land use planner, sorry.
Welcome.
And Victoria, I have,
Yeah, we tried, good, I'm glad you got it, because we tried to open up the, we had trouble opening up the, yeah, the
Dr.
slide,
Snowden?
yeah.
Well, then let me just keep
You
a
can't
couple of
print
those
it.
and
Here, just pass them down.
and just walk through them. Oh, there we go. It's up there. Thank you, Victoria. So the planning board last night had its first discussion, as you sat through, on the zoning amendment warrant articles that they're proposing for the May 2024 town meeting. So what I could do is give you a very brief initial introduction, but the details of those articles still remain to be discussed. So the most significant article, the article that the planning board will really spend a lot of time working on over the course of the winter to bring forward at the February and March public hearings of this committee, and then to bring to town meeting in May, will involve the Mumford, that's the mixed-use multifamily overlay district zone in our zoning bylaw. To remind everyone, this came about as a response to the MBTA Communities Law that was adopted in 2020. Under that law, all communities that are determined to be MBTA communities, which Westwood is one, are required. The law actually says they shall have a zoning ordinance or bylaw that provides for at least one district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted by right. Since that law was constructed in 2020, guidelines have been produced by, at the time, it was the Department of Housing and Community Development. They've been renamed the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. They had comprised guidelines in late 1921, and they finalized those guidelines in August of 2023. So just to give you a refresher, the key components of the law: an MBTA community must have zoning laws that include at least one district of reasonable size, located within half a mile of a train station or bus stop, suitable for families with children, so you can't have any age or bedroom restrictions. They must have a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre, and multifamily permitting processes cannot be discretionary, so they have to be allowed by right. So that was the law itself, that's what was required. So Westwood had gotten a jump on this as soon as the law was passed in 2020, and the planning board began a year-long process of studying parcels that they thought would be eligible for inclusion in this, what we're calling our Mumford district. Two of the parcels that they included were at University Station. One is the Gables Residential Apartments, which is 350 units of market rate and affordable housing. 69 of the 350 units are actually affordable, the rest are market rate. And the University Place Pulte Homes condominiums, also at University Station. That's 100 condominiums, 1 and 2 bedroom condominiums, and of those 10 are affordable and 90 are market rate. Both of those properties were included within the first Mumford district that the planning board developed. That district also included property at 22 Everett Street. That's the former Foster Block property. This is a chart that just shows you the specific parcels that were included. The 2 parcels comprising the Everett block, 2 parcels comprising the Gables property, and 1 comprising the Pulte property. Together, those parcels add up to 16.16 acres, which at the time the planning board considered a district of reasonable size. Back in 2021, when they initially discussed this district, it went to the May 2022 town meeting and it was approved as a district of 16.16 acres. So the MBTA guidelines were finalized in August of 2023. Town meeting approved our Mumford district in May of 2022, and the Attorney General approved the adoption of that district, I believe it was in early December of 2023, so soon after these guidelines were formally adopted. The guidelines are slightly different in this version than they were when the planning board first created the Mumford district. So just to go through some components of the guidelines. Westwood is defined as a commuter rail community. Some of you may remember when we were originally discussing this, Westwood was listed as a bus community, which we were very concerned about because the requirements for a bus community were substantially greater than for a commuter rail community. Westwood was invited to give our comments to the state, and as a result of those comments, they changed us to a commuter rail community. The housing unit capacity requirement for a commuter rail community is 15% of the total housing stock. Westwood's total housing stock, as calculated in the 2020 census, is 5,801 units. Therefore, our required unit capacity under the MBTA community law is 870 total units. That means we are required to enact zoning that would allow for the creation of 870 units of residential multifamily housing. We don't have to create those units, we have to provide capacity for them to be created by property owners that choose to create them. These latest guidelines determined that Westwood must have a minimum of 50 acres within its district, and at least 25 of those acres must be within a half a mile of a commuter rail station. So if you remember, the law itself requires that the entire district be within a half a mile of a commuter rail station. The guidelines that were finally produced by the state lessened that requirement. Only half of our district actually has to be within walking distance of a train station. So up to 25 acres of that 50 can be located anywhere else in Westwood. At least 10% of the residential units that are allowed in this district have to contain 3 bedrooms. That's a requirement, not just in this district, but for any affordable housing, that's also a requirement going forward. You may remember at University Station when we adopted the zoning for that and saw the Gables project come out of that, all of the units in the Gables project are 1 and 2 bedroom units, the same with Pulte. At that time, the state was allowing 1 and 2 bedroom units. They no longer do. At any projects that require state approval now have to have a minimum of 10% with 3 bedrooms. The latest guidelines also say that we cannot have any unreasonable parking requirements, and that EOHLC, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, must review and approve all towns' districts for compliance with the guidelines on or before December 31st, 2024. If we had been a rapid rapid transit community, we'd actually have to have this approval by December 31st, 2023. So we get one more year at this. I just want to caution one thing about that timeline. It sounds like a long way off, but I'll point out that our district that was approved by the town in May 2022 did not receive Attorney General approval until December of 2023. So our hope is to get a new expanded district approved in May 2024, and we may go right up until that deadline of December 2024 to get our Attorney General approval of the zoning bylaw change. So just keep in mind, this is pretty much a one-time shot that we have to have a district that would comply with guidelines approved by town meeting in May 2024. So this slide shows you what we have now in the current Mumford district that was approved in May 2022 compared to what the latest guidelines require us to have. So the district we created in 2022 that includes Gables, Pulte, and the 22 Everett Street property totals 16.16 acres. The MBTA community guidelines require us to have a minimum of 50 acres. The current district includes 450 existing, previously approved units, the 350 at Gables and the 100 at the Pulte complex. Those are existing units. It will also include 160 units at the Everett Street property, which were approved by the planning board last night. So that means a total of actual created on the ground residential multifamily units in Westwood of 610 units, where we had handfuls of units in 10 years ago. So I think that Westwood has taken great strides to actually produce residential multifamily housing in Westwood, which is the spirit of this law. And we did much of that long before this law existed. But now we look at the guidelines. The guidelines from EOHLC will only count the units that are achieved through capacity of our zoning. And the way they look at that, we have 16.16 acres. The by right development allowed in that current Mumford zone is 15 units per acre. So their calculation will show that we have capacity for 242 units. It doesn't matter that we will actually have on the ground 610 units. They will only count 242 under our current bylaw. So that's one of the things that the planning board is going to be looking at in their amendments that they're coming back to the Springtown meeting with. They're looking to increase the district unit capacity by another 628 units, and they're looking to increase the land area by 33.84 acres. So to get up to the 50 acre minimum and 870 unit capacity. So I want to give you a look at a refresher of what these densities look like. So the 15 unit per acre density is what the current Mumford zone allows. That's what's allowed by right. There's a special permit process that allows the planning board to consider more dense housing developments, and they did that with 22 Everett Street. 22 Everett Street at 15 units per acre would have allowed 102 units of housing. Last night, the planning board approved a project by special permit that allows 160 units of housing, so greater than 15 units. However, we would not be able to count any more than 102 under EOHLC's current guidelines. So these pictures show you what kind of density some of our existing housing projects have. Gables, with the 350 apartments, that's a density of 51.9 units per acre, far in excess of what the current Mumford district allows. The Pulte condos are 36.4 units per acre. Elsewhere in town, we have the Steeple building, which is not in a current Mumford zone, but that's 21.7 units per acre to give you a sense of what a building of this density looks like. Here, right next door, the Colburn School building is 13.6 units per acre. So a 15 unit per acre building is somewhere in scale between the Steeple building and the Colburn School building. And then just to point out two other multifamily properties we have in town, 321 Washington Street, that is also less than 15 units per acre at 12.6. And about half scale is the 401 Washington Street project, which we've had in town, I believe, since the late 1950s. And that property is about half the density of a 15-unit complex that recently turned over from 9 apartments to 9 condominiums. So the first article that the planning board will tackle is an article to amend the current Mumford zone. They will amend section 9.9, and they are still discussing exactly how they will do it. So their goals are to expand the district to at least 50 acres and a unit capacity of 870 units. They will consider separate sub-districts with 15 units per acre and 35 units per acre with two different districts. That's one way they may decide to go forward. What they would do if they did something like that is take the properties already in the current district for Gables and Pulte that I've showed you are already at a much higher density and put them into their own zone that allows a higher density. That would enable the board to take advantage of the density that exists there, and allow EOHLC to calculate the density we actually have as opposed to just 15 units per acre.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I missed some of
Yes,
that.
so as I showed you before, the University Station, Gables, actually has a density of 51.9 units per acre, and Pulte has a density of 36.4 acres.
Correct.
Under our current Mumford zone that those are both in, the district only allows 15 units per acre by right, so EOHLC will only count 15 units per acre.
Okay.
That's why EOHLC is only saying that we have 264 units of housing.
So if we expanded the density in those areas?
In
we
those
would get
areas
credit
only,
for
where
those.
there's existing development, we would actually get to take credit for the number of units that are existing.
So I want to make sure I understand that. So by changing that, we could go back to them and say that we've actually met much more of the goal than you said we haven't met, okay?
Yes, we can, yes.
And, okay.
So-
I know we've been very creative in the past. I just want to make sure that if you read the letter of the law, that these regulations like that, I mean, that to me, would that not solve a lot of the problem for us?
It solves the unit capacity problem. So there are two requirements that we have to comply with. One is 50 acres that are within this district, and another one is 870 units of capacity within those districts. So if you just took 50 acres and we just zoned 50 acres for 15 units per acre, we wouldn't get to 870 units. We would be short capacity. So this is one way to make up the missing capacity. We'd still need 50 acres, but part of the land that's already in our Mumford zone, we can put into sub-districts, so Mumford 1, Mumford 2, Mumford 3, and they would have different density requirements. That would allow us to take advantage of what we actually
How
have.
much would you solve of the, 870 units? How much would we solve that by doing that?
So all of it eventually, but the planning board still has to look at how they're going to get the other 50 acres. So until we know how they're getting the other 50 acres, we don't know exactly how much we're short by.
Can I ask one other question? Given the fact that the planning board approved 22 Everett Street yesterday for 160 units, but we're only allowed to take credit for
102. So that would be another sub-district. If we wanted to, we could take Gables at a sub-district and say the minimum density on that property is 50 units per acre. We could take Pulte as a sub-district and say the minimum density for that property is 35.
Everett Street?
For Everett Street, we could do that as well. I'd have to check to see the density might be, I don't know, 18 or 20 units per acre. I don't, 20 units per acre. So that's one way of getting to the missing capacity that the planning board will take a look at. So they just started discussing this last night and haven't decided which route they want to go, but that's one possibility of looking at unit density by having several different sub-districts. They will.
Is this just meeting the requirements on paper but has no actual impact on?
Yeah, because the units already exist, but
you would have
we
to
just.
tear it down to make use of that.
Yes, yes. So right now, by having those two properties, and then you can look at the Everett Street property as well, by having those in a district that only allows 15 units per acre, no one is going to tear down a larger building to build a smaller building. So there's nothing that's ever going to come from that. So what we're doing is we're going to take credit for what we've actually developed.
But you were trying to do originally, weren't you?
We were.
They just sort of, okay.
But we thought that our comments to the state was that they should give towns credit for the housing they've created, not just for the zoning that they've imposed.
Thank you.
And they're not willing to do that. So this is a way to get around it so that we do get credit for what we've proposed. And if someday someone does, for some reason, want to take down buildings that are existing. They'd be able to build new buildings that are similar scale.
Quick question though, I think one of the issues we had last year was the existing housing stock at university didn't have the number of bedrooms necessary to count them.
Right, but so what they're not looking at the housing stock that's existing. They're looking at the capacity of the zone.
Got it, okay.
So it doesn't matter what's there. It wouldn't matter if those districts had no housing. As long as the zone allows for capacity to establish the number of units that we need to make up for in our assigned 870 unit district capacity, then we're good, and we have compliant zoning.
It said, I think in here, that you have to have 25 acres within half a mile of the train station. When you have, like, the University Ave station is at the corner of town in an isolated area next to a highway and marshland and another town, how do you possibly get enough acreage within a half a mile when you have a station like pinpointed like that?
That's in the corner, you still can do it. So we have a lot of land around University Station. Much of it is developed and unlikely to turn over in the short term.
Okay.
But that's not a criteria. The criteria is that we zone it in a way that a property owner, if they chose to redevelop it, would be able to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
And
so
then the other 25 acres, that doesn't have to be all in that one area. It could be another
Yes,
part of
so-
town that's
so
not
we-
within a mile of the
right,
train.
we have 3 train stations that we can work with. We can work with the University Station train station, the Islington Center train station, and the Dedham Corporate train station, because some of our land in Westwood is within a half a mile of Dedham Corporate. So we have those 3 options to calculate the first 25 acres, and then we have the rest of the town to calculate the second 25 acres. Now, I will point out that we believe it is more important to have more of this multifamily housing near train stations than not near train stations, especially since we are limited in the parking requirements that we can have. So we want to put people close to transit. So I think the planning board will likely look for more than 25 acres to be within a half mile of a zone, of a MBTA station.
And if more than 25 is within a half?
We could put all
You don't have
50.
to put 25?
You do not.
Yeah,
We
okay.
could put all 50 acres.
As long as it's 50 in total?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So these are the 2 tacks that the planning board will look at. They'll look at unit capacity, which I just explained one way they can increase their unit capacity. They still have to have 50 acres somewhere in town, so they'll look at that too. There's another provision in the final design guidelines that wasn't in the original ones. And the state will now allow towns to restrict the first floor of a portion of their districts to make it remain commercial. And this would apply in downtown districts. So if we wanted to take High Street, or we wanted to take Washington Street, or some properties along there, we wouldn't have to give up the commercial space on the first floor. We could allow residential space on the second floor. So when we first adopted our Mumford district back in 2022, the planning board was very interested in encouraging greater development on Washington Street and High Street to get some upper story residential units, which are currently already allowed by our flexible multiple use overlay districts, but haven't been developed to the extent they could. They were interested in doing that, but the original guidelines did not allow you to have mandatory first floor commercial use. So by imposing the Mumford district on either of our downtowns, that would have run the risk of losing commercial properties in those districts.
The new rule would really encourage some development in this part of town?
I'm hopeful it will, and the planning board has to look at those properties and decide if they think those should fall within the 50 acres, but I think it would be helpful. Now, keep in mind, on High Street, we already do have flexible multiple use overlay district, and none of the property owners have yet taken advantage of that. This is a little bit more flexible because it's more of a by right development. They don't have the same level of risk in coming to the planning board that they could be denied their approval. But I want to also point out that the commercial districts, if you do maintain a mandatory first floor commercial, you can't count them as part of the 50 acres. You can still count them for unit capacity.
Oh, my God.
Unit capacity, but not for the 50 acres. So there's, they give and they take in the same
Well, I think this
motion.
side of town is jealous of how beautiful Islington has turned out.
We
Islington is
hear
now-
that a lot, yes. We hear that a lot.
I think the
so.
people in Islington would happily give you our traffic.
Yeah.
I was going to say, except for the traffic, but it is a beautiful part of town now. It always has been, but now we've just improved it a little.
So the planning board will be looking at those different tasks. They'll find out, they have a list of properties to go through that are most advantageous for considering the turnover in the Mumford district. So I think we want to use these districts to encourage growth in the areas that the town most wants to see growth, to encourage rehabilitation of properties that are most in need of rehabilitation. I think that's what we did with Everett Street. So we had a Superfund site that was very deteriorated and not providing the level of tax dollars to the town that the new project will provide, not providing housing in a location that is very suitable for housing. So I think that the district that we created already has worked out well, and I think that the planning board will take the next step, expand the district in a way that will also be beneficial to the town. But they have a long list of properties along High Street, along Washington Street, along Providence Highway, at University Station, all throughout the town, at Glacier Everett. They will go through all of those properties, and they will make a determination in the course of a public hearing with residents who are interested, discussing with the planning board their thoughts on which properties they think are most appropriate. And through that process, they will come up with a minimum 50-acre district that allows a capacity of at least 870 units. So that's their task, and they are up for it and ready to get running, so.
Before you move on to Article 2, let me just say that I abhor the state enforcing a policy decision down on the towns that's going to basically change the culture of our town. And I think the Executive Office of Housing has run amok with administrative law, throwing it out the window and just doing whatever they please without following the process of creating an enforceable norm. Many of the things that are in their guidelines are not legally enforceable norms. This whole thing about 870 unit capacity, that's nowhere in the statute. That's a creation of the Executive Office of Housing. And I think that, and whether or not the statute that was passed in 2020 meets its original objective is going to be part and parcel with whether these guidelines are reasonable. And if the Executive Office of Housing continues to be sticks in the mud and not playing ball with the towns, then it's not going to reach their objective, because it's forcing the town to do just what you described. We've got to find a way around these guidelines, and that's not the objective of the statute.
So just to be clear, two things. One, the statute itself is very brief, and it really has just 3 requirements. That you have a district of reasonable size, that it's within a half a mile of transit, and that it allows multifamily housing, family housing. Those are really the only requirements of the statute. So the guidelines expand well beyond that. While the statute says within a half mile, the guidelines now say, only some of it has to be within a half mile. The rest of it can be wherever you want to put it.
Some of the guidelines allow for more flexibility, but a lot of them don't. And
Yes.
a lot of them put more burden on the
They do.
towns than I think they had the authority to do.
There are parking restrictions nowhere in the
But I
statute.
think that the approach that Nora and the planning board are taking,
Well,
first of all, I think there's a legitimate commitment in town to increase housing. I mean, we've done it it's a thing we need to do anyways as a community. And I think you guys are taking a fairly creative approach to do what we got to do, but protect us at the same time. I mean, I don't really, if you do what you did at 22 Everett Street, some of these other projects, I think at the end of the day, where these do get developed, I think you're protecting us fairly well if you can get us through this.
So to be clear, I don't want to give the impression that the planning board is trying to play fast and loose and get away with something. They are trying to create housing which is in the spirit of the law, but they are trying to also take credit for the housing they've already
And
created.
protect the character of the town at the same time. I think you're taking a very balanced approach.
I have an academic question for my own edification. Not that I'm proposing this or suggesting we should go this route, but what if we were not to comply? What is the consequence?
So we had to file an action plan explaining how we were going to comply. We had to do that, I believe it was in January. And the plan we filed, after discussing it with the planning board, with the select board, and I think we discussed it here at the February hearing, our plan said, we have created what we believe is a district of reasonable size that meets all of the requirements of the law. And the response that we received from the state was, your plan is non-compliant, and you must bring it into compliance by such and such a date. And if you do not do that, you will become ineligible for the 3 grant programs listed in the statute, as well as any other grant program that the state has to report on, because they have the ability to have, a qualitative assessment where they could take into consideration our non-compliance with these guidelines.
So we would be giving up financial support from the state?
We would, but
What's-
there was another factor. It was made clear that there would be consideration by the Attorney General to take action against towns that failed to comply with the guidelines.
Do we have any idea what that potential action could be?
I'm not qualified to discuss that,
Okay.
so that's probably more of a question for
Well, how
town
would that
council.
work? Because we're a town meeting form of government. Is the Attorney General going to sue the individual residents of the town?
I think they would sue the town itself.
But the vote, see, it's the vote, right? If the town votes against it, right?
That's a different issue. So you have the issue of the town bringing an article to town meeting to vote on, which we did for the first phase. We received passage. Now we have to go to town meeting with a revised article. If town meeting votes against that, and the state then, in response to a vote against it, took action against the town, then your question comes into play. But we're not there. And I'm very hopeful that the town will support the article that the planning board worked so hard to develop.
We do get a reasonable amount of state funding, correct? If they're threatening,
We do. So in the past, it was I'm drawing a blank now, for one of the funding routes that we had used. We've received about $5.5 million over the years from that. That was one of the listed programs. But this would apply to other programs. Our Green Communities funding, our Complete Streets funding, two funding sources that we use much more frequently and obtain a lot more funding for, would no longer be available to us. And there's a long list of other ones. So as I stated, in August of 2023, the guidelines were finalized, and the guidelines that were finalized at that time came with a letter with a extended list of grant programs that we would not be eligible for if we don't meet.
None of which are listed in the statute, by the way.
No. So the guidelines have, without a doubt, expanded well beyond the original statute. But I don't believe the town is looking to take on a lawsuit against the state at this point. I think that our first course of action is to try and comply. And so the planning board will try to develop a zoning article that is acceptable to town meeting voters.
and
If they're
towns-
unable to do that, and if it's unable to pass, then we'll look to the next
And
step.
towns are taking this pretty seriously. Lexington, I know Brookline didn't Brookline finally get a?
Yes, Newton did, I think Milton did,
Yeah,
or they're in
so
the
it's-
process.
I mean, I think they're all looking at it. It's a bit of a carrot and a stick, and I think towns are reaching the decision that we're not going to, I'm
It's
sure.
it's a total overreach by the state.
I understand it, and probably from a legal perspective, you're right, but I think towns are basically saying, it's hard to fight City Hall, it's even harder to fight state government. And, I mean, the bureaucracy and what they can throw at us, the cost we would incur in a lawsuit's not going to be very insignificant. So I think you're taking a very prudent approach to a situation that if we didn't have to do this, we wouldn't, but I think we're taking a reasonable approach to it.
So if we didn't have to, we wouldn't comply with the guidelines, but we are still looking to develop housing. We just developed 610 units in 10 years. So I think that's impressive. For a community the size of Westwood, a suburban community that 10 years ago only had a handful of multifamily properties, that one I showed you on, right here, 401 Washington Street, was the only significant multifamily property in town other than the senior housing complexes. It was the only one. And now we have several.
To show you how
properties.
ridiculous this whole thing, these guidelines are, everyone knows the apartments that are next to Legacy Place in Dedham. None of they're right on top of the commuter rail stop. None of them count.
How come?
Because
Because
they're
they were
not,
all built under a special permit before this law became.
right, but if Dedham chose to create a district to include those at a density that would allow those, then they could count them. And so
So-
that's exactly what we're looking to do
So
here.
with sleight of hand, you can do that. instead of the Executive Office of Housing saying, you know what, Dedham, Westwood, you made a good effort, we're going to count those units.
Right.
You're being too rational.
So Nora, question
That
though.
would be too easy.
So if we think about this, what if the state does come to their senses, they actually clarify the rule, we don't need 50 acres, something happens in the future, can we rezone these areas?
We can rezone anything at any time if town meeting chooses to do that. So we have zoning articles that we bring to you every single year, different articles. You know, I would prefer to bring fewer, but we often have zoning articles that need attention. And if in the future we decide for some reason it's no longer needed for compliance with state law, and we decide that it's not appropriate for Westwood, absolutely, we can pass another zoning article that undoes exactly what we did. If that's the direction that the town wants to go in. But for right now, we need to do this in order to comply with state law and with the guidelines that are in effect.
And you'll be coming back to us with much more specific information
Yes.
as we see. You have lots of time. This is basically giving us an overview of what they're working on. There's no decisions we're making tonight. I think it's good that they hear
appreciate it.
some of the concerns that citizens have. We're not going to ask you to write up the article, Chris.
And the
That's-
planning board only began discussing
Better
this
not.
last night. So this is I'm telling you where we're starting from. You'll just have to wait until we come back next time to find out where we go to.
Nora, just to digress, did we ever get a decision from the state on whether ancillary apartments count towards our housing stock?
They were not counted in the 2020 census unless they had a separate address. That we know. How they'll be counted in the 2030 census, we don't know yet, because every census has different rules. So
But we
just have
met
to
our
wait to see what
threshold. We meet our
happens.
threshold.
We meet our threshold. We are over 10% with the project that was approved last night, which will have 29 additional affordable units. That will give us capacity to absorb 290 units of housing.
Wow.
So the 160 that are being developed in that property, plus another 130 units of housing. So there are still single-family houses going up around town. There are individual parcels that are being split, and a second house is being added. There are still accessory apartments that are being developed, which may count as individual units in 2030. Our goal is to stay above that 10% in 2030, and we're well on our way to doing that with the project that was approved last night. So we still have to keep our eye on the ball, but any projects for multifamily housing, from now forth and going back as far as the Gables project, any projects with multifamily housing or any special permit housing, like the open space residential development that was approved at the homes at 45, the former Westwood Lodge, that was special permit housing. It required 15 units of affordable. 15% of the project had to be affordable, and we do that with everything other than single-family development. So if someone wants to come to Westwood and do anything other than a single-family subdivision, they are required that whatever units they produce, 15% of them are affordable, so we will always stay ahead of that need to be above 10%. So I think we're in good shape. The work we did at University Station, at Islington Center, and now here at Everett Street have kept us above 10%. And I don't see a likelihood of us ever falling down below that again, as long as we keep our eye on the ball. So we're in
You want to
we're
move
in a
on
good
to your
place.
other articles? And
Yes. All right, so Article 2 is to expand wireless communication overlay districts. As many of you know, there are dead zones throughout Westwood, and the strongest dead zone is around University Avenue and Canton Street. So in recognition of that, the Planning Board is considering a bylaw that allows wireless communication at University Station. They'll take a look at some other areas in the town where there may be dead zones, but the first one will be University Station. Because University Station was intentionally developed to a very high design level, we're going to have stronger restrictions on the wireless communication facilities in that zone than we have elsewhere in town. They will all have to be stealth in canisters so that you won't have a kind of hodgepodge of antennas on the roofs of buildings. So it will still maintain the design criteria that were originally conceived for University Station, but it will also help people living in the area or driving through the town or working in the businesses to have useful cell service. So
Can I ask
that's
a
a strong
question on
need.
that? Would these requirements be prohibitive in any way to encourage that kind of development by the carriers or whoever?
They wouldn't. I will say it's a little bit more expensive. So if you look at the rooftop cell towers in different places in town, we have some on 690 Canton Street. And if you look at them, there's a real scattering of visible antennas on that building, because those were in compliance with the guidelines we have throughout town. We have another one at the public storage building off of the East Street Rotary, where the carriers there have intentionally put their antennas in canisters, and it's a much smoother, cleaner look, and that's the look we're going for at University Station. It costs a little bit more for those carriers to put their antennas within those enclosures, but it's more pleasant for everyone else, and I think it's actually more protective to the equipment. So I haven't done a study for this to see if they replace them as often, but I would expect they're safer from weather concerns. So.
And carriers are eager to do this?
They are. So this actually started with a carrier, Verizon, asking to put antennas at the Gables apartment building at University Station, and we had to tell them the zoning bylaw simply doesn't allow it. There is no zone there. There's a zone in the underlying industrial area, but since that property was developed as part of the University Avenue multiple use district, there's no allowance of wireless community within that overlay district, so they couldn't do it. There's also a proposal, we've heard from another carrier that's interested in going on the roof of the Courtyard Hotel. So we know there are carriers that are interested, and we know there's a great need down there for businesses, as the residents, and also my understanding is many of the houses along Canton Street and in the neighborhoods off of those also suffer from very poor cell service, depending on who your carrier is. So we're hopeful that this would help that, and the article will be advertised in a way that allows the board to consider other locations throughout the town if additional wireless facilities would be helpful in those areas, then we'll zone properties in those areas too.
This may also help our public safety people, too.
It could, yes, with their radio communication, because their radio communication goes on the cell tower. So there might be some places in town that have high elevation that are appropriate for cell towers that are not currently zoned for it.
I can attest to this extreme need off Canton Street.
Mm-hmm.
You just, yeah. I would love to move this to the special town meeting if we could.
A little too late since you already had your hearing.
We're all still here, right?
Hasn't been advertised, so we wouldn't make our deadline. All right, so that's proposed Article 2. Proposed Article 3 is addressing some definitions. So we have a new building commissioner. Mike Perkins is the building commissioner now, and he's looked through the zoning bylaw, and he's identified some definitions that he thinks are a little bit problematic, that are not written as clearly as they could be, so that a developer or homeowner doesn't understand what the building commissioner is actually looking for with the application. So he suggested some revised definitions, and they probably go a little bit beyond just a housekeeping article, because they could change the interpretation depending on how you look at it. So we're going to put a separate article forth that addresses this with all clear definitions for the subjects here. I will advertise this one also a little bit more broadly in case there are other terms that come up in the bylaw that need to be redefined. Mike Perkins has also, we benefit from the fact that he's actually an engineer as well as our building commissioner, and he has put together some excellent illustrations to explain two things that seem to be very hard for some of our contractors and residents to understand, and that's how we calculate average height of a structure and also how we have wall and fence height limitations. What people don't understand is you have a limit of how tall your fence can be, but if it's a fence placed on a wall, now you measure the height of the fence from the base of the wall. So that's been confusing, so he's produced some illustrations that we will add to the zoning bylaw too. Everything with the intent of trying to make it as transparent and easy to understand for anyone who picks up our zoning bylaw. Article 4 also comes from the building commissioner, Mike Perkins. He has asked that we go through the bylaw. He identified one area within the wireless communication overlay district section of the zoning bylaw, but we're looking for others. The Mumford district is going to be one of them, where there are references to specific parcels by address, by property name, by map and lot, and all of those things can change. A property name can change if a property is sold. Our map and lot can change if a property is subdivided or land is swapped with the property next door. Sometimes properties change their addresses for whatever reason. So he has asked for us to go back in, look at the bylaw, and make sure that all of those references are removed, and in all those cases, there's simply a reference to the official zoning map. And all the districts, all the overlay districts are on the official zoning map, so there's no need for the name, property, and map and lot reference in the zoning bylaw, and it could be confusing down the line. We could end up with errors if we don't address this. So that'll be a pretty simple, straightforward article. It does not change anything. It just makes clear how they're referenced. Article 5, this one just came up today, and I haven't actually discussed it with the planning board yet, but it also comes from Mike Perkins. He looked at the accessory apartment bylaw, and there, for accessory dwelling unit that's allowed, there's a definition of how it is measured. So accessory dwelling units approved by special permit by the Zoning Board of Appeals have to be somewhere between 500 and 900 square feet. There's a minimum size, there's a maximum size. And it's listed in the bylaw as floor area, but it's actually always been measured from the very first accessory apartment that's been issued. It's been measured by the building department as gross floor area, not net floor area. So we want to make that clear in the zoning bylaw, because it's always a question every time someone applies for a building permit. There's always that discussion about whether they meet the standard or don't. So we're going to make it clear from the beginning and put the term gross floor area in place of floor area. 6 is a proposed article. The planning board last year introduced a general bylaw article to require maintenance and upkeep of dumpster areas and clear enclosures. That bylaw only applied to permanent dumpsters. It didn't apply to temporary construction dumpsters. And the planning board is taking a look at whether or not they need to expand that. This is a maybe article. I will advertise it so the board can consider it. The Board of Health has recently considered regulations that address these temporary dumpsters. Their hearing on the Board of Health regulations isn't until January. So we're going to wait to see what the Board of Health does. The planning board will discuss this, and this may be an article that comes forward, or it may be an article that's not needed. So
Nora,
we'll
could
get
we
back
have
to you on that.
clarification on that? Because I think last year it was only for commercial properties.
Yes, and I think that's the direction the planning board is going on again. I don't think they're looking to apply this to the single-family home that's having a construction project.
Perfect,
done. I
yeah,
think it will
but-
just be commercial construction.
Let's be clear on that.
Yes. So that one, we may come back to you with it, or it may disappear. It'll all depend on whether it's needed. And then the final article is a housekeeping article. So far, I had originally thought that we would address the accessory dwelling unit issue of gross floor area versus floor area as a housekeeping article, but I, on further discussion, think that belongs in its own article. So as of today, we don't have any housekeeping amendments, but we always find them as we're preparing articles for town meeting. We always find somewhere in the bylaw, there's an error, a misspelling, improper numerical listing. So we're going to keep this article, we're going to advertise it. If we need it, we'll go forward with it, and if we don't, we'll have maybe 5 articles instead of 7. So those are all the articles the planning board is tackling this year. They did have thoughts about some others, but they're going to hold off on others because they really want to focus their attention on the Mumford one. So the planning board is also going to hold its first hearing on articles about a month early this year, in the hopes that they will be better prepared when they get to your February hearing. Because we always have that tension of needing to have our public hearing and allow the residents who come to the planning board public hearing to have their full say. So when we come to your February hearing, the articles can never be set because they're still waiting for further input at their own hearings. So we're going to start our public hearing in January, give ourselves another month ahead of the game, and I think it's especially needed for the Mumford district, which will also build in more time for education on whatever district article they come up with. So I'd like to invite everyone who's interested to come to the planning board's January 9th public hearing.
So it is by Zoom, correct?
It's by Zoom. All the planning board meetings will be by Zoom until at least through May.
Do you get much attendance at your meetings?
We do. We get a fair number of people that are.
It's one thing I still wish. I think on Zoom, we probably get more people who watch our meetings after the fact than attend. It's one of the things I wish we could just get more public participation. But Nora, as usual, I want to thank you so very much. I think it's great the way we're doing this. You're giving us an update ahead of time. I think we know where your focus is. I think it's very, very good the way you're adjusting your meetings, and thank you very much, folks from the planning board, and it looks like you had some good staff on board, too. I watched your...
We have terrific staff. We
your
have a new
staff
town
support
planner
last
since
night was
last year.
excellent, so-
Yes, and a new housing and land use
Welcome,
planner.
welcome to you, and have your other, is it Josh, have him come in sometime and...
Elijah.
Have
Elijah
Elijah come
Romulus
in and
is our
meet
town
us
planner.
sometime, be great.
He was hoping to be here tonight, but he wasn't able
No,
to.
I was very impressed last night, you got some lot, good support, so thank you so very much.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions before we entertain a motion to adjourn?
Not yet.
Oh, what?
Minutes.
Minutes. Every time I do this, and you do the most beautiful minutes
Thank
of
you.
all time. Thank you. Take care, guys. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
A motion to approve the, what was it, 11:15
The
minutes?
Chairs update.
Yeah, that's the next thing, chairs update.
Okay, oh, yeah, the only thing I want to mention is when you do your subcommittee reports this year, remember, we've got to convert those into write-ups that are a bit different. In other words, if you do a PowerPoint presentation, we don't put the PowerPoint presentation into the warrant book. We actually write it up. And take a look at how we transitioned from some of those presentations to the write-ups last year, okay? So think about what the public's going to want to... They're not going to get the content of a PowerPoint slide. They do get it when we, put a lot more explanation in. We are going to probably receive some articles this year dealing with the, what did I call it here? The Charter Commission.
Yeah.
So it's going to be 4 or 5 articles. So I think Chris and I are going to volunteer, but we're going to look for some help. Anybody who wants to get involved, who likes getting involved in the charter, because we've already got 5 subcommittees, so I think Chris and I will try to handle most of the charter articles. But if anybody's interested, please join us, or you can sign up for it. Let's see, with that is about it, right? Unless you have anything you want to add?
Nope, I'm done.
Okay, so let's do this. I don't see any other business. And let's go to approval of the November 15th minutes. Can I get a motion?
Motion approved.
A second.
Second.
Will you please take the roll call?
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
John Kerry,
Yes.
Jim Ferraro,
Yes.
Seth Federickson,
Yes.
George Hurst,
Yes.
Caitlin Joseph. Yes. George Marone,
Yes.
Christina Pedjuick,
Yes.
Chris Paretto,
Yes.
Sean Waller,
Yes.
Aziel,
Yes.
Okay, and then can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
We get a second.
Second.
Will you take the roll call, please?
Bill Bruce,
Yes.
John Kerry,
Yes.
Yes.
Ferraro,
Yes.
Seth Federickson,
Yes.
George Hurst,
Yes.
Caitlin Joseph. Yes. George Marone,
Yes.
Christina Pedjuick,
Yes.
Chris Paretto,
Yes.
Sean Waller,
Yes.
and Aziel.
Yes.
And Sean, thank you for hanging in. Everybody, stay warm and cozy, and look forward. Our next meeting will be we'll be at the special town meeting.
Right.
So please show up. You're going to take a shot at the initial write-ups. I'll work with you on it. Okay.
Yep.
All right.